So hello and good afternoon, everyone. Next, we have Mr. Neil Bottle, the Program Director of the BA and MA Fashion and Textiles, Digital Fashion from the University of Creative Arts. Neil combines his research and design work with his position as the Program Director for Fashion and Textiles at the University of Creative Arts in Rochester. He is a founder member of the Chrysalis Textile Innovation Research Project at UCA, a member of Contemporary Applied Arts in London, and on the Crafts Council Directory of Makers. Neil's work has been acquired by major collections around the world, including the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Cooper Hewitt Museum in New York, and the Crafts Council Collection in London. His installation pieces have found commissions with Smith & Nephew, Nortel, Hilton Luxury Hotels, among others. His consultancy projects include designing exclusive range of accessories for the Victoria and Albert Museum, the British Museum, the Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, and the Royal Academy of Art in London, as well as the Guggenheim Museum in New York. The topic for his session today is All That Remains. So welcome, and over to you, Neil.
Hi, Anahita, thank you for that introduction. Could you just remind me how long I've got to talk to everyone? What's the time slot?
So about 30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay, fine, thank you. Great, what I'm going to do is share my presentation now. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
That's working, okay. Okay, morning everybody, or afternoon as it is in India. It's early morning here in the UK. It's about 5 minutes to 9. So Anahita, thank you for the introduction. So you can see a picture of me on the slide there, and the text on this actual slide has what Anahita has read out. So I'm going to go straight into my presentation, and I'm aware at the moment that most of you have decided on which particular aspect of art and design you want to study. So you're at that point where you're about to sort of dive in and start your career in art and design. I have actually visited your campus. I remember what it's like. It's very sort of modern, lots of clean lines. I visited in 2019, actually. I came to Ahmedabad, and it's about the third time that I've been to your city. And over the last 12 years, I've done about 20 trips to all the different cities in India working for UCA. So
excuse me,
it's been...
Yeah, sorry to cut in. I would request you to please do it a full screen for better visibility.
Oh, sorry, full screen. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
That's there
we go. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, over the last 12 years, I think the trips that I've done to India has really enriched my creative practice, and I think I've spent more time in India than any other country that I've visited. So I feel it's my second home, and I can't wait to come back. I think you're at a college with a very good reputation, so I think you have every opportunity to make the most of what you have. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my career. I've been working for about 30 years in art and design, and I wanted to talk to you about how I started off. So this is the creative beginnings of where I started. I did actually, well, at the moment, I look after a BA in fashion textiles, which focuses mainly on print, which is screen printing, analog printing, dyeing, as well as digital print. I look after the master's course in printed textiles, and also the master's course in digital fashion, which is a new program that we've just started off, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that later on. And then there's a new program we're developing, which is a master's in fashion theory, which is global fashion cultures. So this first slide that you can see is a picture of me and my wife. You can see that I used to have brown hair many years ago. Actually, it's the same style, but never mind. And this is in the print room of my studio, which was based in Kent in the UK. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from London. And I studied printed textiles. So I did a 1-year foundation, and then I did a 3-year degree in printed textiles back at the end of the 80s. So it was a very long time ago. And when I left university, I was very lucky to win a couple of awards and prizes. And that was the first sort of tip that I was going to give to you, is do apply for any competitions, opportunities, anything you can get involved in that will be something you can put onto your CV. So I took part in the New Designers exhibition in the UK, and I won a nice chunk of money to help me set up my business, but also it was the first thing on my CV. With that money, I bought this print table. There was a factory closing down in Kent, so I bought this print table, I rented my studio, and I started off printing. That's my wife on the left, who was started to help me in the business. So the second slide is a picture of me, very much kind of hands-on, mixing all the dye chemistry and the formulas and experimenting, painting, screen printing, using stencils. So my background is very much in the sort of analog craft of textiles. And then more recently, I've moved into digital design, which has been really exciting and quite challenging. So these photos were featured in Country Leaving magazine. I guess today we would say that the equivalent of those magazines would maybe be social media or getting your work in front of an influencer. But prior to social media, which, let's face it, is only about sort of 5 to 8 years that people have really been going for it. So before that, we would have to kind of court the magazine press. Here you can see a detail of one of the textile pieces that I was doing, very fine quality print, screen printing with sort of metallic pigments, hand painting, blocks of color, and sort of gradations of tone. So they're very time consuming to do. And so I pitched my products at the kind of luxury end of the market. This is I love liner cut printing, etching, silk screen printing, all of those different sort of processes are things that I really enjoy doing. When I was studying my textile degree, I didn't really know exactly what I would do when I graduated. And I think it's something for you guys, most of you have got 3 or 4 years of study to go. And so it's a long way off. But I think all the opportunities that you get on your course will help you to decide which way you want to go, which direction you want to go down. And for me, I had a lot of feedback at my degree show, and the first exhibitions I did, people wanted the actual product. Around this time, 2 or 3 years out of university, I was designing textile print on a freelance basis. So I was selling designs to different companies, but I was also beginning to develop my own label as well, which is just Neil Bottle. That's my name, that's on the label. One of my first big opportunities was to do this particular project, which was for the Royal Academy of Arts in London. It's a really fantastic art gallery, and they had an amazing shop there. So I designed this scarf for them, which they sold, and it did very well. And it opened up lots of different opportunities for me to move into creating sort of fashion accessories and bespoke designs for different companies. So this was a collection. This photo looks very dated now. It's very old, and it's printed on, I think it's an A6 postcard. And I can see it's kind of, the color's a little bit faded from the image. A lot of these images are pre-digital, so we'll soon move into the digital sphere, but you can see the sort of change in quality when we go into digital. This was a collection of sort of wearable and home accessories that I produced for the Guggenheim Museum in New York, which was really exciting. And I carried on designing for them for about, I think it was about 10 years actually. So it was a really good commission. I used to do, so what I was doing, I was printing fabric, making it into garments, accessories for home and fashion. And I was doing lots and lots of exhibitions. So what I hear from my students now is, I've got some slides to show you later of a couple of my students that have been really successful in the last few years. And what they're doing actually is you know, they're using social media to promote their work on Instagram, get opportunities and get their work out there. But what I did was actually to take part in physical exhibitions. That's how we did things then. And so I would do an exhibition in London, meet buyers, and people would come from all different parts of the world. I don't know whether any of you have heard of Joyce. This was a magazine run by Joyce Stores. It's a very big chain of department stores in Taipei and Taiwan. And the lady who owned the stores really liked my work. So she connected me with the buyer. I presented the work, and they did this 3-page spread about my work in the magazine. You might recognize the model on the front cover. That is a very young Linda Evangelista. She was one of the first supermodels with Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, all of those kind of supermodels. So this was a great opportunity for me to get my work into a magazine. And then when I was doing an exhibition, I could show somebody, this is the magazine I've been in, and it would give people a kind of, it would make people feel comfortable that they could buy the work and trust the work because they'd seen it in the magazine. So that was a little bit about my background. I built up doing commissions for galleries and stores. I did designs for the Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, the British Museum, Philadelphia Museum of Art, lots of different art galleries. And also I was selling to stores. Some of you might have heard of the famous store Harrods in London and Liberty. So really, really kind of upmarket, expensive stores. So that was the kind of place that the work was situated in. And I ran the business for about 10 years on that basis. And then I started to move into digital design. So this is where I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I got into digital design. And another beautiful museum in London is the British Museum. It's in central London, and it's just vast collection of antiquities and historical objects and art. And it was one of the first emails that I ever had, actually, back in around 2000. And I had an email from the buyer, and he said that he really liked the work and he wanted me to design a collection for him. So I met him at the museum, and at that point, everything was hand painted, hand printed, made by me in my studio. And I think by then I had about five people working for me, and we were making everything ourselves. And he said that he wanted to print the products in Italy. He wanted to sort of produce them on a bigger scale than I could do in my workshop. It would be too many numbers. And he wanted me to design them digitally. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. I'll do that. I'll design them. He wanted me to design them in Photoshop. So I said, that's a great idea. There's just one problem. And he said, what's the problem? And I said, I don't use the computer. I don't know how to do this. So he said, I'll give you 3 months, go away and learn how to do it, and then come back. So it was a great challenge. And so I went off and sort of taught myself how to work with Photoshop. And then I went back and designed this collection. So it was a kind of challenge. It was an opportunity. And then it kind of opened a door that took me in a new direction. So I think one of the things about studying art and design is that you don't know if you do interiors or architecture or fashion or textiles, you don't really know what you'll end up doing. And that's really exciting. I think for me to be working with so many different people, I've worked with architects, I've worked with interior designers making fabric for furniture, I've done things for wall coverings, I've done products for fashion, all kinds of different things. And that's made it really, really interesting. So I've put this slide in. You've seen some of the sort of men's ties that I did. I made a lot of silk ties by hand. And I wanted to learn how to produce them digitally. And if you look at this block in front of you, I think if you can see my cursor, you can see the sort of tip of the necktie. It's quite an interesting pattern because when you cut the fabric out, there's absolutely zero waste. So I suppose in a sense it is a sustainable way to use the fabric. This is the main piece at the front. And then the triangle section that is left behind is used for the middle part of the collar and then the small end of the top. It's a really clever way to cut them. And the people that made the ties, they were sort of stitching them by hand. They were beautifully made, and they needed to be very good quality to be able to sell them to, you know, I sold them to Bergdorf Goodman in America, in New York, Neiman Marcus. I sold them to Harrods and Liberties and all of those kind of places. So they needed to be really good quality. The people who made the ties for me had never worked with a designer who'd used digital textile print. So I thought that's interesting. So this was the first time. There was no pattern. I had to develop the template in Photoshop and then put the design into it. So it was a really kind of interesting project to do. Around this time, I started to work. I started teaching, and this was about 2000 and 2002, 2003, something like that. And I started doing visiting lecturing. I would go in for 1 week and work with students, and then gradually that built up to 2 or 3 days a week. So I was running the business, still designing things, and then I was working at the same time. So kind of balancing that that combination of things. I had no idea that I would end up teaching in the position I do now. That was not on my plan list. It wasn't something I intended to do. It just kind of happened organically. So again, you never quite know what you'll end up doing. So around this time, I decided that I wanted to learn, I suppose because you guys will have the opportunity to learn from your tutors, you know, CAD, Photoshop, Illustrator, you know, or Corel Draw, whatever the programs you use. But for me, I'd never had the opportunity to sort of learn it properly. So I decided to do a master's course. So I did a master's course in digital design because I wanted to learn more about digital design. And after working for sort of 10 or 15 years, that was a really good opportunity to go back to university and to study that master's level, creative thinking, learning new skills. So that really worked for me. A lot of the students that I teach now come straight from undergraduate course and they go straight on to the master's course that we do at UCA. Other people, particularly students from overseas, they will maybe take 1 year or 2 years to have work experience and then come back. And that works really well. There are lots of different reasons why you would want to study masters. For me, it was about getting a kind of formal qualification in a slightly different design direction, which was digital design, but also in terms of my teaching career, I needed to get that master's in order to be able to go higher in the education system in the UK. So that's what I did. And I also did a postgraduate in teaching. I think I did the teaching postgraduate first, and then I did the digital design MA second. So this was a piece that I designed. It was inspired by my very, very first trips to India, actually. And I was really intrigued by this sort of fantastic craft and technology sort of sitting side by side, the hand loom, the tie-dye, the printing, the artifacts, the art and design in a culture mixed with this sort of hunger for high tech, knowledge and systems. And so that kind of inspired this collection. But I like the idea of combining a digital process with a craft process. And that's something which has carried on throughout the rest of my sort of, I guess, through my career. I've combined sort of processes like sort of hand pleating with digital printing. This was a dress that I made for the Lace Museum in France. It was an exhibition celebrating the sort of history of the Lace Museum. Again, it was a digital piece, but a handcrafted sort of couture piece of a garment. I'm going to just show you this slide. This, I think one of the things that gets hidden often is the sort of all of the work, the layers, the complexity of working in digital design. Some people think it's kind of easy. And when they used to come to my workshop, they would see all the screens and the dies, and you could see the physical labor going into it. But all of that is hidden within the sort of within the software on the computer. But I think you can see here I've done all the layers. Sometimes I work with 150, 200 layers, which I really enjoy, sort of building up that level of complexity. Another project I did, which was exhibited at Contemporary Applied Art, I wanted to do a digital print on a 360-degree object. So piece of furniture where the pattern was all over the whole thing and sort of connected up. There were no joins. The pattern was seamless. This project was done with a bespoke furniture company using the webbing, the springs, the horsehead to create the furniture. And they'd never worked with anyone digitally. So again, that was another sort of way of exploring, combining digital and craft together. And that's something which I've sort of continued to explore throughout my time. I suppose as I took on, I moved into apply for a full-time teaching job about 18 years ago now, gosh. And I did 5 or 6 years in further education, foundation, as you might know it. And then for the last 12 years, I've been working in higher education, which is delivering the BAs and the MAs. So I don't produce things for big stores or museums. I don't really do all that. I focus on my teaching, and I've moved into more research. I found that for me, I'd produced so many objects that I didn't want to continue that kind of factory, you know, the production cycle on and on and on. I wanted to spend more time designing combined with my teaching. So my recent research looks at how can digital technology change our behavior, and how can digital technology change the creative process. What you can see from the work that I've shown you is that I started in a place of craft, screen printing, dyeing, handmaking the textiles. And now I've moved into a place of digital production. So we can see how digital print can be produced without screen printing tables and dyes and all of that. It's contained within the machine, which is finished. I can send, 100 designs on a key drive to a factory. 3 weeks later, I'll get this beautifully printed piece of fabric. So I'm kind of separated from that creative process, the production process, which allows me to focus on the design, which is what I really want to do. I started to investigate a broader range of ideas, looking at how creativity and our behavior is changed by digital processes. And for me, one of the most obvious things, or the most immediate things, was about photography. The way we take photography has changed our behavior. It's changed photography forever. So you can see this is an image of 2 lovely ladies taking a selfie. So the question is, has Instagram killed the fashion magazine? What happens now? And some evidence we can see, this is an image that was taken in 2014. So this was actually the very start of social media, and it's become so embedded in the way that we design, sell, and communicate our work. So you can see this guy hanging out the window of a plane, absolutely crazy things that people will do to get the perfect selfie. And actually, this is a couple, very appropriate. This is an Indian couple who fell to their deaths. They were standing back, taking a selfie, and walked off the edge of a cliff and fell down and died. So there's the craziness that's around. So we can now see the adoption of a particular body language, a particular pout. People don't really smile anymore. They push their lips out. And in fact, in the UK, it's become very popular to have plastic surgery to make the lips look bigger and fuller, and to change the face through surgery to look good on social media. So how crazy is that? That's changed our behavior forever. This is a Dolce & Gabbana collection from a few years ago. And I really like this collection because it's about the models. Instead of the models coming down the catwalk being presented or, you know, photographed by the paparazzi, lots of flashing lights and photography, they're taking their own pictures. They're saying, we don't need the paparazzi anymore. We can take our own pictures of ourselves looking good. And that's one of the ways that that digital technology has transformed that creative process. So I started to think about All That Remains, 30 years in the making. So this was a collection that I started. It's a 2-year body of work. And I was thinking, my goodness, I've been working 30 years. What have I done? And where do I go next? And I started to reflect around, it was this idea of photography and the selfie. How can that be used? How can that be used as a way to sort of explore memory recall and the way that we remember our own experiences from the past, photography and memory? So I started to explore the link between photography and memory. So this is me holding a picture of my grandfather. He actually passed away 20 years ago. He would have been about 110 now. So this is a very, very old picture of him holding this teddy bear. We can see the object has a physicality. It's degraded, it's aged with time, the colour's fading, but it is a physical object in its own right. But what is it? What does it actually mean in the world? When we think about how many photographs we can store on our iPhone, we can have tens of thousands of images that are basically meaningless, okay? This picture is the only picture of my grandfather in the whole of his childhood up to the age of about 20. There's one image that is this precious object which exists in the world, compared with my son, who has literally hundreds of thousands of images that are digital, that will be never printed out and probably never looked at. So what are they? Where do they exist? They are virtual. They exist somewhere in a virtual space, but they don't exist in the world. So I started to explore my own sort of relationship with my photographs. And I recently, sort of 4 or 5 years ago, we moved house and I had to live in a temporary place because the house was a renovation project. And I lived in the apartment that my grandparents had lived in. And so I started to look at these photographs because that was around the time my grandmother died. And I started to think about what were the memories left in the building, that sense of the fabric of the building, and what were the memories that were real, created by looking back at the photographs. So that sort of chain of thinking led me to look at some of the artifacts. This is an image for the All That Remains exhibition that was held at the Ruthven Craft Centre, fantastic gallery in the UK. And these were some of the objects that had become embedded with memory about my grandparents and my early years of creativity and where it came from. This is the title piece. It's called All That Remains. And this is a picture. If I just go back, just here, I don't know whether you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a beautiful picture of my grandmother when she was about 21, and she's holding my mother as a baby. My mother was about 2 then, and she's now 85. And I was thinking how beautiful that photograph was. She would have got dressed in her finest clothes. She would have had her hair done. She would have gone to a photographic studio. She would have had to have kept very still, because this is the early days of photography when the exposure might have been quite long. And this would have been a special occasion, and it would have been quite expensive. It was a way of recording a special occasion, the birth of a child, a wedding, a birthday. Now we use photography to communicate. It's a way of communication. It's a language. This is me having a cappuccino. This is me doing this with the fingers, whatever that means. This is me doing something right now to be communicated on a phone through Instagram. Completely different to the early days of photography, which is about recording those special memories, printing them out and keeping them. So this main photo became the core of the All That Remains collection. And you can see here this sort of myriad of hundreds and hundreds of photographs. Each one was individually scanned. Some of them were very poor quality. Some of them were very, very old. They're all analog. So I've combined this in a language, a creative language that suggests layers of embedded memory and history being combined in one piece. Here's a close-up. There are pictures of me as a child embedded in there, pieces of handwriting. The location of the map is the location where my grandparents lived. You can see a building here in the top right-hand corner, and that's the view from the window where my grandparents live. And I used to visit them as a child, and my grandmother would be sewing or making a dress. And so those sort of memories of connecting creativity, photography, and memory all starting to coalesce to become something new. Again, here's the Photoshop, the layers and layers and layers. I think there's about 200 layers in this piece, combining and layering, changing, thinking, adapting, and combining things together. It was a very technical project, and there was a particular shade of red that is very difficult to get on a digital printed fabric. So I was trying to combine to get exactly the right shade of red, and lots of tests were required. So there's a very sort of technical side. You can see here the photographic halftone experiments to get exactly the right quality. Here's a close-up of the quality. I didn't want these pieces to be too perfect because, you know, it was inspired by vintage photography. So I had to do a lot of work to kind of add in those little mistakes and tones and washes of color. I didn't want it to be too digital or too perfect. Here you can see me cutting out some of the fabrics when they arrived at my studio, and some of the detail of the very fine quality printing. This piece was called Follow Me, and it was a kind of tongue-in-cheek piece done about the sort of proliferation of social media. It was created in 2019. My mother was born in 1936, and with a symbol for infinity, which is everything in the world. And you can see here the memory of all of the photographs. The past is looking at the view out of the window. The present is a screenshot of the digital piece in action. And the future was a picture of my son's Instagram. His future will go forward on Instagram. Here's a close-up of one of the other pieces. We have scanned pieces of fabric, which I found in the building. We've got handwriting. We've got layers of memories and references. This is a picture of the exhibition space. So I did about 30 large-scale pieces of work. It took 2 years. It was a funded project. It's probably one of the biggest exhibitions that I've ever done. So there were a series of framed pieces and objects that were placed in the cabinet as well. Here's a close-up of some of the pieces. These are quite big. They're kind of like 2 meters, 1.5 meters square, or 2 meters high, that kind of size. One on the left is a picture of my grandfather, surrounded by those kind of Instagram bubbles of sort of dates, memories, history, all of that kind of thing. I did a range of interior accessories and wearable accessories that went with the collection as well. This one is called Creative Connections. Creative Connections, it's very much about the location where I grew up and the building that my grandparents lived in, and all of those fragments of sort of history and memory that have become embedded in the pieces. You can see here. And then just to finish off, have I got 2 more minutes, Anahita?
Yes.
2 more minutes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to introduce you to the School of Fashion and Textiles at UCA. It's a specialist arts university, and we have about 6,000 students all studying art and design, and we've got 6 postgraduate courses in the School of Fashion. Just to give you an example, we've got interior design, we have photography, we have lots of different courses. In fashion, we've got digital design, we've got print, we've got tailoring and craft. For you guys, that won't be of any interest, but it might be that at some point in the future you think about perhaps a master's level course. We have lots of international students that come to us for master's level, and we've got MA Fashion Design, which is about taking your undergraduate studies and putting that into a business model and starting your own collection. MA Digital Fashion is about creating virtual garments that don't exist in the world, actually creating things for social media, for games design, and for, I guess, creating a more sustainable fashion world, because you don't have to waste so many material developing products. You can just use digital fashion to render those. And then we've got MA Printed Textiles for Fashion Interiors, which is really an extension of your undergraduate studies, but taking it to a high level. We've got a new course starting, which is going to be MA Textiles and Innovation, looking at sustainability, smart textiles and new fibres. And then we have MA Fashion Photography and MA Creative Direction for those that want to work in art and design, actually don't want to make things anymore. They want to be involved in the fashion world in a different way. So I hope that's given you an insight into how I started, graduating as a student, taking every opportunity that comes, trying to apply for competitions, opportunities, put those on your CV. I suppose when I started, it was magazines, exhibitions. For you guys, it's going to be social media, maybe. But I still think exhibitions are really important to get your work out there and to get people to see your work. And then just really keep banging on the door and asking for every opportunity that you can to get your work into a shop or a gallery, or to get your work out there to be seen. And then also you can see that I've reflected on that sort of transition from craft to technology. Probably the biggest thing that is going to impact on Indian craft, design and manufacture. Currently, only 9% of the world's textiles, printed textiles, are digitally printed. More than 90% is still hand screen printed, rotary printed or block printed. And a lot of that is in India, Pakistan, Thailand and China. So I think for India, thinking about 9% digital in the next 5 years, that will change. How will that impact on the sustainability of Indian craft and production and employment? So I think there's some really huge changes coming with digital print and digital fashion. So there are lots of things for you to think about there. Would anyone like to ask any questions? Has anyone got anything?
Yeah. Hi, Neil.
Hi.
Yeah. So, Anita here again. So I would like to wrap up the session. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your work in the design world, from the classical to digital, and the opportunities you got, as well as the opportunities you created for yourself in the sphere of fashion and textiles.
Thank you.
I'm sure our new design students have been inspired and enriched by your presentation, and you've left us with a lot to think about. So in conclusion, thank you so much for making the time. It's been wonderful.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck, everyone. Okay. Bye.